Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Mali calls for an emergency UN Security Council meeting over alleged French acts of aggression. Bamako accuses Paris of espionage and supporting jihadists as French troops who'd been in the country on an anti-terror mission pulled out. Also, a week ahead of the tightest general election Angola has faced since 1992, voters able to cast their ballot from outside of the country for the first time are excited to finally have a say. But both at home and abroad, faith in the transparency of the race is fragile. And a reinvented mobile phone opens doors to users who have been challenged by conventional devices. The open smartphone responds to voice commands delivered in dozens of African languages. But first, the animosity felt in Mali towards France persists. Just one day after the French forces withdrew from Mali, the country's foreign minister wrote a letter to the United Nations Security Council calling for an emergency meeting to discuss what it's calling French acts of aggression. It's accused France of violating Malian airspace, conducting military operations without coordinating with the Malian armed forces, and supplying terrorist groups with intelligence and weapons. Sam Bradpeace in Dakar has more.
These allegations against France are obviously extremely grave. In a letter addressed to the United Nations Security Council, the Malian Foreign Ministry accused France of multiple violations of international law. One claim in particular, though, that France was supplying weapons and intelligence to terrorist groups operating in Mali seems particularly doubtful, especially when you consider that France has been fighting against those very same groups since 2013. It's worth putting this letter in the context of the situation on the ground in Mali at the moment. The Malian armed forces have been on the receiving end of some pretty heavy defeats and some pretty heavy losses at the hands of jihadist groups operating in Mali. Some analysts think that the Malian government is blaming France as a scapegoat, as a way to distract from its own failings within the realm of security, a move straight out of the populist playbook.
Well, Kenya's president-elect, William Ruto, has said that he's poised to forge ahead in tackling the expectations of the electorate, even as controversy continues to swirl around the Electoral Commission's declaration of his win. Ruto is preparing to take office, even as his defeated rival, Raila Odinga, plans on legally challenging his victory.
There is no time to waste, says Kenya's president-elect William Ruto, who spoke out on Wednesday after his highly contested narrow victory against his rival, Raila Odinga.
Our government must be accountable. We will shortly be taking steps to make sure that we run a transparent, democratic, but accountable government.
Ruto, who is currently vice president, won with 50.5% of the vote against Odinga's 48.9%, but his opposition called Monday's election in Kenya null and void. The results are determined by Kenya's constituencies, where they're called before being taken to national counting centres, where the Electoral Commission then announces the final outcome. This year's election was said to be one of the country's most peaceful votes, but Odinga's accusations against the IEBC of vote rigging on Tuesday has plunged the country into a period of uncertainty. 4 of the IEBC's 7 commissioners have said they do not support the official results, calling the counting process opaque.
The Commission's chairperson has conducted the election as though he is the National Returning Officer's role in declaring results that were not approved by plenary by all 7 commissioners renders the results unconstitutional.
Odinga has vowed to pursue all legal options. He now has until Monday to petition the Supreme Court. If it annuls the results, a new election must be held within 60 days.
Look now at some news in brief. Tunisia's new constitution is to come into effect after final results came in this week, handing a massive 96% win to the yes vote. That's pretty much in line with preliminary results which were released last month. Opponents of President Kais Saied say that the constitution was illegally written and will undermine democracy by giving him nearly unchecked powers. Said's backers say the changes were needed to kickstart the country's economic and political paralysis. Also, a dozen heads of state from across southern Africa met in Kinshasa on Wednesday for the opening ceremony of a summit of the SADC regional bloc. As well as talks on economic growth and integration, the two-day meeting will also see current SADC chief, Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera, handing over leadership to Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi. At least 8 people have been killed and scores injured in wildfires in the mountains in the east of Algeria. Firefighters and helicopters are still trying to contain several blazes threatening residents in affected provinces. A Spanish judge has ruled that the body of former Angolan President José Eduardo dos Santos be handed over to his widow and be allowed to be repatriated to Angola for burial. Dos Santos' death, aged 79 in July, was also found to have been from natural causes, despite allegations of foul play by his daughter, Chitse. She had also asked for her father to be buried in Barcelona, and her lawyers say that they'll be appealing the judge's ruling. Chitse claims that Dos Santos did not want to be returned to Angola for a state funeral, fearing the current president, João Lourenço, would politicize the occasion. Well, Dos Santos stood down 5 years ago, and now Lourenço's fate is to be decided, as Angola's just a week away from national elections, and 14 million people are expected to go to the polls on August 24th. For the first time, Angolans living abroad will be able to vote remotely in what is likely to be a close race between the MPLA party of incumbent João Lourenço and the UNITA party of his rival Adalberto Costa Jr. Sophie Lamotte has more.
They live far away from home, but still hold the issue of free and fair elections close to their hearts. There's 400,000 Angolans living abroad, and for the first time, they'll be able to take part in the general elections on August 24th.
It's new. For the first time in history, an Angolan in Portugal, in Europe, who has registered can vote. That alone brings a lot of emotion. It's the first time in my life that I'm going to vote.
Incumbent President João Lourenço, leader of the MPLA, party in power since the country's independence, is hoping to be re-elected. He succeeded to the late leader José Eduardo dos Santos, who led the MPLA and the country for more than 4 decades. Lourenço was applauded for leading several anti-corruption investigations against him.
This first gathering takes place at a time when Angolan citizens are still grieving their late president, José Eduardo dos Santos. But life goes on, and his greatest joy would have been to see his MPLA win these 5th general elections in Angola.
He's opposing Adalberto Costa Jr., leader of the UNITA party, and focusing his campaign on the Angolan youth, economic opportunity, and the need for political change. The UNITA's popularity has grown from 13% in 2019 to 22% this year.
Today, this gathering shows that Angola will not give up its right to defend its future. A different future, a bright future.
According to some NGOs, Angola has faced unprecedented crackdown on human rights in the lead-up to the elections. 2,000 Angolans and at least 50 international observers will be monitoring the polls in a bid to guarantee free and fair elections.
Now, the Open smartphone is a reinvented device that responds to voice commands delivered in dozens of African languages. It was made in Ivory Coast by a Beninese creator who hopes it can help more rural African communities make the most of phone-based technological solutions. Take a look.
It's called Open, a phone that speaks several African languages.
Orange balance. It will give me my orange balance in the Bole language.
This mobile phone was designed for people who cannot read or write.
For parents, it's really important, because when you ask them their phone number, they can't say, because they actually don't know their phone numbers.
d'aller voir un petit frère ou bien leur enfant pour leur demander alors que c'est les informations qu'ils peuvent avoir à temps réel.
Madeline Zukpa is a client and reseller. She finds using the open phone easy because all she has to do is ask for what she needs.
This phone is good because it speaks many languages. If I want to call my parents, I speak in French and it answers in Mouré and in many languages, so I like it a lot.
The phone is manufactured in Grand Bassam, east of Abidjan. Alain Kapo Chichi, its inventor, is from Benin. He was the first entrepreneur to set up a computer assembly plant in West Africa, and he already has big plans for his new phone.
Beyond the 50 that we've already done, including the 16 Ivorian languages, we want to reach 1,000 African languages. And we're happy to say that there are already nearly 2,000 speakers who've registered and with whom we are working today.
Donc que ces gens-là puissent aussi utiliser leur téléphone, leur superphone, j'allais dire, avec leur langue, et qui déclenchent les actions de façon automatisée.
The open phone is available on the Ivorian market at a price that varies between 45 and 91 euros. It is also already available in Benin, Burkina Faso and the DRC.
And finally, top Rwandan R&B star Ivan Biruvan has died of pancreatic cancer at just 27. Tributes have been pouring in from across East Africa for the talented artist. His work also resonated across the continent. In 2018, Biruvan won RFI's Prix Découverte, one of Africa's top televised music competitions. He passed away in India, where he was being treated before he lost his battle with the disease. We'll leave you with one of his hits, Oya. Thanks for watching.
I swear to God, I will always be there for you.